Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Friday's webinar with Anicca Digital. It's myself and Stanley today. I was hoping that the two volunteers that we're going to look at would be joining me as presenters, but I think they've come in as delegates instead. So hopefully they're in the audience watching. I am recording this webinar so that we can make sure that you guys can all see it later. So I've got two websites to go through today. They're very different. One's Deltanet International, and the other is Satori Yoga. So thanks very much for the guys for volunteering. I won't name them, so they if they come up on the chat, then they can be anonymous. But what we're going to do is I'll quickly show you the websites first of all, and then we'll go into the analytics account. And I've deliberately not done too much research, so I'm going to share my screen and then go into the process of reviewing these sites. So I'm going to share my screen, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and look at Deltanet first of all. So Deltanet, when it comes up, it seems to be a bit slow. Maybe I'll have to show you Satori first. Yeah. So while Deltanet is reloading, this is Satori Yoga. They are a local company with a whole load of different courses. They've got, obviously, a lot of this has been on Zoom, so we've had Zoom to replace it, and they've got quite a lot of different classes that you can book. It's linked to an online appointment system, and it has got payments in here. But you'll see in a minute that although they are obviously taking payments and things, you can see where that's tracked in online. That's the second site that we're going to look at. The first site is Deltanet, which is health and safety online, and they are a little bit more mature as a company. They've been around for a lot longer. They have basically a lead generation site, and they do a whole range of different courses, which you can put an inquiry in online. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to make sure that everybody can see. Everybody can see my screen okay. So if somebody could just type that you've been able to see what I've shown, and then I can go into analytics, because obviously while I'm showing my screen, I can't actually see what's going on here as well at the same time. So if somebody could just leave a message that they could see the two sites, that would be really useful. I'll now get about 20 all at once, but that's okay. So just waiting for somebody to leave me a message. Yep, thanks, Angela. Cool. Hi, David. Good morning. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to a different browser. And this is the browser where we've got our Google Analytics account set up. So just to explain what we do. So what we do is we have a separate email address called search@anicca.co.uk. And when we use that, what we're able to do is link to lots and lots of people's analytics accounts. So if myself or any of the team go on board, go into this account, we can see any of the accounts that have linked to us. So that becomes pretty obvious when you look at the big list of accounts that we've got in here. Now, what I've done just to make my life a little bit easier is I've actually starred the one that I want to look at. So that if I accidentally click off, I will, be able to find it again. And I'm just going to see, if I was thinking that it may be one of the guys that actually own these websites that were trying to message me. So what I want to do is, I don't really spend much time in the home tab, which is where you arrive. It's not really, it does give you a sort of an immediate impression of what's going on. And it has got a couple of quite nice features, which we can look at in a minute. But the one that I really go to straight away is acquisition. But before we do that, I thought it would be quite useful just to explain the sort of hierarchy of the menus. So analytics uses the ABC approach, which is audience acquisition, so double A actually, B and C, so behavior and conversions. So audience gives you an idea of the makeup of the people that are arriving to the site. Acquisition is how they got there. Behavior is what they did on the site, and conversions is what actually, whether they actually converted. And you've got to have set up some form of conversion, which could be a sale or a lead or a goal or an event, in order for that to work. So I wanted to show you this account first, because quite a lot of that has been done already. And I also wanted to show you where I go in straight away, so that you can sort of see my approach. So the first thing that I do is I go into acquisition, and I want to see where the traffic is coming from. So my sort of immediate approach is to go to all traffic, and I look at channels. Now, channels isn't always set up perfectly, so I will show you an alternative way of setting this up. But the majority of people will have channels set up as a default. And what you'll see here is that as soon as you go into this screen, which you can now move this over to the left-hand side to get it out of the way, it gives me the last 30 days of data. So you can see I've got the weekend effect of day by day, nice traffic in the week, and then it drops down at the weekend. And that's because it's a pure play B2B. Now, I can look at this from a week perspective, which will even out that, so I can sort of see which weeks are doing what. And also, I can start to look at different date range. So I don't tend to look at the last 30 days. What I tend to do is I click on, say, November, and I look at the whole of November. Now, in this case, what we can see beneath is the data split out by the main channels. So we've got organic search, which your guys will know as sort of SEO. That's the left-hand side. Direct traffic, and also paid search, referral, and social. So let me just explain what those are. So direct traffic is people that have come directly to your URL. Paid search is people where you've done advertising, and that will obviously be Google, but it can include Bing. And if you've got it set up wrong, it can also sometimes include Facebook. You've got referral traffic, which is from other links, and then you've got social, and then other. Occasionally you have email in here as well. And what you'll notice straight away is the importance of organic search. We've got 35,000 users out of the 42 that come in from organic search. Now, if you add that lot up, that will add up to 42,715. Now, that's not the case with sessions. So sessions is the number of actual visits, I guess is the easiest way, that they spent on the site. And one of the things you need to understand is that if you go away and have a cup of tea and you come back half an hour later, that would actually be classed as a separate session. So these won't add up to 50,000, because some people will come in more than one way. So they could, within that period, they could have come in as organic or paid and then come in as direct. So that will actually add up to more than 50,000. You can also notice here the percentage of new users. And what you'll see here is organic search. Well, that's about 83. Direct is 12%. So overall, you've actually got sort of 42,000 out of the users, out of the 42,700 are new users. So the majority of the people coming to the site are for the first time. And this is pretty normal unless you've got a lot of sticky content on your site. Now, bounce rate means that they've arrived on the first page and left immediately. So they've not really done anything else. And 82% is slightly high, and you'll notice that it does vary quite considerably depending on the source of traffic. Now, bounce rate for B2B, you sort of expect it to be 50 to 60%, because quite often people will come to a site and then they'll either grab the telephone number or they'll go to a blog and then they'll leave immediately. But 82 is a little bit high, so we do need to perhaps look at that. The number of pages per session, because the bounce rate is so high, which is mainly due to the fact that you've got mainly new users, isn't particularly good either. And I'd like to see that more than 2 pages per session. And in the same way, I'd like to see it more than 2 minutes per session as well. Now, what you'll also notice on the right-hand side is some goals and conversions. I'll just go through that in a second. So just to clarify then, what we're looking at here is we're looking at the summary slide, and we're looking at the data for each of these dimensions, which is all of these different channels. And these are what we call the metrics. So the metrics is the data, and the dimensions are the rows. And if I change that to say device or location, we'd be looking at different dimensions, but in most cases, we're looking at pretty similar metrics, and these have been standardized. Now, the bit that will change is the goals. Now, if this was an e-commerce website, we would probably have transactions, conversion rate, and revenue. But because we're on goals, we have got a number of goals that we've seen in this last month. And this is the Contact Us form. Now, what will happen when we set up goals is that we would fill in a form on the website and then go to a thank you page. So what we're actually measuring is, normally we're normally measuring the number of people that have gone to that thank you page. Now, we can look at different goals, and there are a few. So you've got inquiry form submit, which is really low, and a few other goals here. The thing that I noticed straight away is these goals are very, very low conversion rates. We're talking about less than 1%. And most websites would be about 1%. So even if you add all of these together and looked at all goals, you're seeing that the conversion rate is very, very low. So the first thing that I would be advising the guys at Deltanet is to look at why their conversion rate is so low. And is that something that's, they're not tracking properly? However, there does look like there's a little bit of something going on that's really interesting here. And this is that the paid search goals is much, much, much higher. And you'll notice the session duration and the page number of pages per visit is much higher as well. And this is much more normal. So if I go and look at something like inquiry form, which is probably, let's try one of the others. So one of these is working quite well. I'm not sure which one it is. Is it? Nope. Quote form. It's the last one I try. So if you add all those together, you get to the all goals, but there's not one that's particularly doing brilliantly. But I must admit, so that one, try form, that's at 1.4%. So that is sort of the one that's driving the conversions for the paid traffic. Now, what this probably means is the paid search, which of course they're having to pay for those conversions and that traffic, is probably very, very focused on the stuff that's working. Whereas in organic search, you really are at the whim of what people are looking for and what people are coming to your site. So they could be coming to your site for a lot of education material or blog material, and that's not really converting. So we need to spend a little bit of time investigating that a bit further. Okay, so what do I do next? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to see how this has changed year on year. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change this to compare with, and I'm going to compare it with the previous year rather than the previous month. And the reason for that is I want to see the sort of big change rather than the seasonal change month on month. And what I'm hoping to see, which we can in this case, is that the blue line, which is the current month, is significantly higher than the orange line from the previous year. So I need to investigate what's happening here. So first of all, I noticed that there's no goals. So let me just try all. So that probably means that, yeah, so it looks like some of the goals were only set up a few months ago. So we need to find out which goals they were and what ones were set up more recently. But the users and the session has doubled in that time. So I need to understand what's been going on. And it looks like they've actually got less paid traffic, but they've got twice as much organic traffic, twice as much direct traffic, and the referral traffic has gone up as well. So I'm quite interested to see whether the paid traffic, it was that try form, what's happened with that. Yeah, so it looks like they weren't tracking this particular conversion a year ago, which is why we don't see that that conversion point. And a year ago, what you do notice is the session duration was lower. So what I really want to understand now is when all this change happened. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look back at a much longer period. And one of the things I really recommend is that you focus on the data in the graph rather than in the table. And I think this is a mistake that a lot of people make, is they just look at tables of data rather than the data that they can see for their eyes, because their eyes will give you a much better idea of what's going on. Now, first of all, what I need to do is I've got too much data here to sort of analyze it. So I'm going to get rid of this variability and put in week. And then what we need to do is understand the pattern. So, sorry, I'm just losing my voice. So what I want to do is not lose my voice, is to plot some of the rows to understand what these big increases were and why they happened. So first of all, I'm going to look at organic traffic, but I'm also going to bring in the top 3. So what I do is I will select them and then I'll plot those rows. Now, the reason I do it like that is that I can actually add more than 3. Whereas I could create a segment, and I'll show you a segment later on, but we are limited to a maximum of 3 segments, whereas I can actually add more here. So we seem to have a massive increase in organic traffic August last 2019. We also had a big change around August this year as well. Now, that doesn't seem to relate to anything that happened to COVID. So there must have been something else going on there. So there's a couple of things that could be. That could be some form of seasonal effect, or it could be that there was an algorithm change around that time, or there could have been a load of other marketing activity which reflects that increase. Now, because it seemed to happen around August each year, what I want to do now is I want to compare year on year, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to look from January 2020. Let me just look at that one. And then I'm going to compare with the year before, and I'm only going to do this for organic traffic. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to get rid of all of these. And let's just see how much of a difference there was year on year. So although I've gone over a year, it doesn't really matter, because what's going to happen is I'm going to see that this is going to be January, that week in January 20 versus that week in 2019. So it looks to me that actually what's happening is that there is a gradual increase, and it's very much related to the seasonality, because these lines pretty much follow the same pattern. So it doesn't look like there's been a massive change which happens at a specific time of year. So I think what we're going to need to do now is, instead of looking at all the traffic, what we'll do is we'll go in and look at the organic traffic on its own and see whether there's a big year-on-year change. Okay, so what we seem to have is around this time of year, there's a sudden increase, which happens every year. So we haven't got a crossing over of the line. So what can sometimes happen is that it was going pretty similar one year, and then suddenly the blue line overtakes, and that would be because there was an algorithm change. So this looks like a purely seasonal impact. And you can see that actually, if you look for the last couple of months, it's actually doing slightly better relative to the year before, because the gap is widening. So there might have been a change around this time in September where we're doing better than we were the year before. So what we might want to look and see if there's some form of algorithm change there. And it looks like there might have been a bit of a change around that time as well. So we might want to see, whereas at that point, it's sort of closed. So if there was a real big difference, you'll actually see the lines almost cross over. So what I would look to do there is I would go and actually go on to something like Moz and see whether there was an algorithm change actually in that month. And if somebody from the Anicca team can do that for me, I'll just flick back to Big Marker and see if we've got anybody can go and have a look for me. Okay. So what I've done so far then is I've sort of got an understanding that organic traffic is the biggest source of traffic. They do have conversions, but the conversions are mainly coming from paid. And what we also can see is that they've got a variety of different goals, and some goals may be more valuable than others. So the two channels I really want to understand in a bit more detail is organic traffic and paid traffic. And let's go and have a look at those. I'm not getting any response back from any, but if one of the Anicca team can go and look in Moz, or one of the algorithm tools, and just check to see whether there was a big update in September. Okay, so let's make sure that everybody can see my screen. I am still sharing my screen, so hopefully that's all good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and understand a bit more about that organic traffic. So if I go back over to acquisition, I can see that I've got a section here on Search Console. Now, Search Console, if you don't already know, gives me data from Google. There's a Bing one as well. It used to be called Webmaster Tools. And what it does is it allows us to see the impressions and queries that happened during that time. Now, at this point, I don't know whether the analytics and the Search Console account have been linked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click through and I'm going to click on queries and see whether we've got any data. Now, what you'll see straight away, if there is any data, is that the date range will be completely different from what's in front of my screen. And I will... Excellent. Okay, so I have got a bit of, you've actually got 16 months worth of data, but I'm going to take away the comparison period. And I'm also going to change it back to weeks. To get rid of the wibbly wobbly line. And what I'm going to do is, this is the clicks, and you can see underneath the type of things that they've been found for. Okay, so money laundering, children acts, equality, diversity, the brand Deltanet, environmental awareness and things. Quite a lot of interesting key phrases. And one of the issues may be that some of these key phrases aren't going to lead to any customers. So they're being found for lots of useful information, but they're not necessarily being found for the phrases that will lead to a conversion. But what you will notice is there's no conversion data associated with this. So that's really annoying, because what it means is we can't really find out which of these key phrases ended up with a goal, which is really annoying. But unfortunately, that's something that that Google took away. Now, I can see if I can put a landing page on here Nope, that's no use either. So I'm not going to get a lot more information than that. So I'm going to just leave it as it is for now, and we'll use secondary dimension later on. Now, what I can also do is I can also add in a second metric of impressions. So this will give me both the clicks and the impressions on a month by month basis. And you can see that this particular site was being found, and there's a bit more of a gap during this period around June, and then there seems to be more clicks around this period. So I suspect that the click-through rate has changed. So if I just look at that, that will give me an idea. Yeah, we've got a bit of a drop of click-through rate here, and then it's grown again. And then average position, which may tell me whether the rankings are improving. That looks pretty consistent, to be honest. So I don't think the average rankings is really telling me a huge amount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to impressions. So what we're really seeing is that this is quite a seasonal business, and at certain times of year we get these big up spikes in search volume. But what I want to try and understand is I want to try and understand how much of the traffic is from brand phrases like Deltanet, and how much is from these many thousands and thousands of more service or generic key phrases, which has to relate to the content that's on the site. So they've obviously got a lot of really interesting content around a few specific subjects. So we can go and have a look at that in a minute. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little search here. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to search on Delta, and I'm going to see out of that 108,000 clicks for the year, how many of them, so about 30%, sorry, 3% is actually coming in for the brand. And you can see there's a bit of fluctuation going on around this period, okay? Now that means that 97% of the phrases don't include the brand, which means the optimization on this site is actually really, really good. So it's all very well sort of understanding that brand, non-brand split, but what we really need to understand is what pages they're going to. So we can have a look at the landing pages and get a bit of a better idea of what's happening here. Sorry, it's taken so long. And what I'm expecting to see is that there's certain pages that are responsible for huge amounts of impressions and clicks. So you've got this compliance, anti-money laundering, FAQ, why is money laundering illegal? What is the difference between unethical and illegal business practice? Health and safety. So these are the pages that are driving the majority of that traffic. So what we need to be thinking about there is how can we improve those pages? Can we update them? And also you can notice that in some cases the average position perhaps could be improved a little bit. You've got a few that's the click-through rate, so maybe the titles and descriptions. So this gives you lots of really useful information about the quality of the content that you're creating. And it also will mean that you can look for ideas around here. That's the home page, which obviously will get a lot of content. Now, I can look at this in a different way. And the way that I would look at that is in the behavior tab. So I'm going to go and have a look at the behavior tab now. And what I'm going to look at is the site content page. Now, the site content page is really useful because what it allows me to do is it allows me to see, and you could sort of see that a little bit with the other one because there was some goals and things there, is that you can actually get a bit of an understanding about what's happening when they arrive on the page. So I just need to explain some terminology on here. So page views is the total page views, whereas the, and this is the unique. So obviously some people will go back more than once. And then this is the time on the page. So you can see that this is the home page, whereas these blog pages are getting very, very long times, 5-6 minutes. That means they're actually reading those pages. And this tells me which ones they're coming in on. So this is entrances. So you've got to understand that entrances could be from SEO, but it could also be from paid media, from other sources. So that's really interesting as well. And that gives me an idea of really what they're doing and how they're coming to the site. Now, what I can do is see whether that's organic or paid by using a secondary dimension. But I also want to look at the bounce rate. And you'll notice that the bounce rate on these pages is really, really high. Now, what that means is that they're coming to the site, they're reading the content, they're finding it really useful, but they're not really doing anything. So what you need is some form of call to action, or sign up now, or register for our newsletter, or something on that page, on those blog pages, which will actually get them to leave their details. Or you've got to use the people that have arrived on these pages and create remarketing audiences that you can then target using paid media. Because they've been to your site before, if you then target them with paid media, they're much, much more likely to convert because they're already warmed up. So we can definitely look at that. So the first thing I just want to do is I want to add a secondary dimension, which is really powerful. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do source medium rather than channel. And this will show me whether they've come from organic Google, whether they've come from PPC. And so I can start to sort of understand whether this is mainly organic traffic, which obviously from there it is, and how that compares with other sources of traffic later on. So what this means to me is that the organic SEO is working really, really well. They've got some really good content, but unfortunately that content is not adding any value to the site, which is why the paid is working so much better. So the paid is giving me much, much better goals. Now, if I just wanted to look at the landing pages, that's the pages they're landing on, I can go to landing pages as well. So the difference between landing pages and page views or entrances, that's sort of where they went next, whereas this is where they arrived. So you do sort of have to understand the difference. And again, you can see that a lot of them are arriving on these blog pages. And if I add I'll just do channels now because it's a little bit easier. That most of these are going to be organic search traffic. Okay, so majority of those are organic, whereas the ones that are going to the homepage are mainly, they know the name of the URL and they're going direct. So that gives you a really different view. But now you can also see which ones are driving the conversions. So if I just order this in the number of conversions, what I can see is it's the health and safety page coming from paid, and it's the home page and the direct, and these are the ones that are driving the conversions. Now, what that then allows you to do is it then looks at, you can look at those pages and understand why they're converting rather than the other ones which are not converting as well. Okay, I'm going to go over to paid media now because I want to show you something on there because I do need to flick over to the other site. So I'm going to go up to acquisition, and this time instead of going to all traffic, I'm going to go to Google Ads, and I'm going to go and look at campaigns to start with. And I may well change the time period. Yeah, I'm going to change the time period. Now, this is really useful because we can see at this point they were doing a lot of pay-per-click, and then they stopped for a long time and they've started up again, but they're doing a lot less. Now, we sort of need to understand what they were doing and what they were spending. So I'm just going to make that weekly. And this is where I really want to sort of understand the data that's hidden in here. So the first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at users versus clicks. Now they're quite similar, so that's okay. Obviously people will click on things more than once, and the sessions and the clicks are quite similar as well. So that's okay as well. You're not getting a massive drop off. You're not getting a slow loading site or anything like that. You can also see the bounce rate, and you can see that the cost per click is quite expensive. So I'm just going to get rid of this call. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use sessions, and I'm going to look at a few of the other things that are happening. So one of the things I'm really interested in is these goals. So when am I getting goals, and what's happening? And I'm also interested in the cost to see if the cost has changed. So I'm going to try CPC, and let's see whether the cost per click. Yeah, as I suspected, the cost per click is significantly higher now than it was a year ago. And you're talking about, you know, the difference between £2.30 and £7. So that is a real difference in cost, which obviously is going to be a massive issue. I also want to have a look at goals. So I'm going to look for goal 12. And I'm going to look at completions. And you'll notice that we've got a lot more goals there than we are getting here. But that could be because you just had more clicks. So I think the conversion rate would be useful, because then I get an idea of whether the actual website is converting as well as it was before. Now that's really interesting, because what we're actually seeing is that the conversion rate is higher than it was before. So even though we've got less traffic, we have got a better conversion rate. So if I just flip back to where I was just a minute ago and just do goals again, what that will allow me to do is, yeah, so sorry, I pressed the wrong one. Goal. I want goal completions. So we're getting less goals than we were last year. But if you look at cost, we were actually spending more money. So with a little bit more investment, you might find that that would work okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go back to sessions again, because one of the things that we find when we look at PPC accounts is that a lot of time, a lot of the stuff's all blended together. So I'm going to just get rid of the goal completions for a minute, and I'm just going to look at this data. And what I want to look at is brand, and how much of the traffic is coming from brand, and whether that's driving all the goals. So I'm going to use brand here. And what I can see that's really interesting is that they spent quite a lot of money on brand back in March. They obviously stopped with what was going on with the COVID, and then they haven't restarted brand. Now, I would recommend that they that brand is worth investing in, because with brand you should be getting your highest conversion rate, but interestingly they're not getting the highest conversion rate with brand at all. So I would want to look and understand what was going on with brand, because I would expect that to give me the best results, and it isn't. It's definitely given me the cheapest results, but I think what probably was happening was people that were looking for Deltanet, and maybe they were looking for just their telephone number or something like that, they were using the PPC instead. But what I would be doing is I would go and I would check to see if anybody else is bidding on the brand. And if they are, then I would want to make sure, yeah, you've not got anybody else bidding, so you don't have to defend your brand. So actually, in this case, I think that's probably a good decision. But what it allows us to do is it allows us to go down and see which campaigns are working the best. And if I was actually reviewing the quality of the Google ads, I would probably be just looking at what they're doing now to understand what's working and what's converting, and see what could be improved. Okay, I'm just going to flick back now to the webinar and see if there's any questions. And then we can go and look at the yoga one. Okay, right. Now James has usefully come on, so so let's just understand what the conversation is. So thank you, Suk. There was an update. Thanks, James, for joining. I have recorded everything, so that's fine. I was really commenting on the fact that your blog content was amazing, really high levels, but it isn't converting. So we really need to look at what you're doing on the page to try and improve that. And I also made the comment about stopping the brand campaigns because they weren't converting. And I agree, you do have quite a few different goals. So very interesting stuff. Thank you very much, James, for joining us. Now I'm going to pass over and we're going to go over to Sue, who hopefully is also in the room. Let me see if I can see her. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, James. And thank you for washing your dirty washing or airing your dirty washing in public. It's very brave of you to do that. But to be honest, there's not really a lot wrong with the way your account's set up. You could do a few extra things around event tracking. And I'm sure there's some really useful data in here that will actually help you improve what you're doing. So I'm now going to go over to Sue. And Sue's site is much less mature. She has got a lot less clicks and sessions. But actually, the reason why I wanted to share Sue's account was there was a couple of reasons. First of all, there's some elements that aren't set up properly. And secondly, she has spent quite a lot of money on Google Ads, which hasn't worked very well. And I want to show you the signs of that. So I'm going to dive straight into acquisition and then look at the channels like I did before. And let's see what's going on. Just going to take a sip of water. So you can see the volume of traffic is quite low, but you have got these spikes. And she told me that she'd spent quite a lot of money on PPC, and I couldn't really see it here. And I was a bit worried because if you look, she'd got 132 people come to the site, but she had only 112 users come from paid. So I was a little bit worried, and I did speak to her about this. But I also was very concerned because she'd got no conversion tracking set up. And we definitely need goals set up for this site. Now, because it's actually taking money, you can do more than one type of goal. So what you would normally do is go into the conversion section and you'd go down, let me just close that a minute, and you'd go down to the e-commerce bit and we would set up e-commerce tracking. Now, e-commerce tracking hasn't been set up. Now, if e-commerce tracking has been set up, which you normally get your developer or somebody like us to do for you, then what would happen is that you would see the value of the sales, because when people went from the site over to PayPal or wherever it was, they'd come back to a thank you page. And then from there, we would then be able to quantify what the value of the sale was, what was actually sold, the value of those sales, etc., etc. So there'll be a whole load of additional information that would be in there. Now, at the moment, we can't see any of that. So the only thing I can sort of see if anything's going on is I can go and look in the landing pages to see whether there's anything in the cart. Now, I think it's called something else. So I'm going to look in the pages and I'm going to just see. So you've got lots of people going to the scheduling, but have we got anybody going to a cart or to a shop? So lots of people going to scheduling, which is good. And they've got schedule an appointment, but we don't seem to have anybody that's going to the cart page or then coming back with a thank you page. So fundamentally, this has been not set up correctly in order for us to know whether the site is actually converting. So what that means is Sue's basically working a little bit blind at this point. Now, if I go back up to acquisition again, obviously the site's not been around for too long, so there's not a lot of organic traffic. So we definitely need to, and you can see by the pages, there's not really a lot of content on the site. Now, it might be the technology that she's using, the type of website that she's using, because it doesn't seem to be anything for the websites to actually index. So that's why there's so little organic search. And if I go back for the whole year, so if I could change that to 2019, what this really means is I would be looking for different technology. I would be looking for something like a WordPress site with an appointment booker added, so that if you've got lots of content on the site, see it's quite a new site there, you've really not had any organic traffic in that time. So that means to me that that website is pretty invisible. Now, what I would do just to check that out, I'm just going to go back to satoriyoga.com. Is the first thing I would do is I would go to Google and I would just do a site colon, name of the URL, and then I would go in and I can see there's 58 results. So these are the pages that are on there, and you can see that a lot of it is just grabbing it from the content. And so really what this website needs is more content for a blog, like you saw with James's site, lots and lots of content, which can really help. But let's go and have a look at this issue with the paid search, because that was what I was concerned about. So I went to Google Ads, and you can go to campaigns. And what I'll do is I'll just keep the longer time because it doesn't really matter. Okay, I think I might have the wrong profile. So I'm just going to check that I haven't been lying to you. So let's just check this one, because if I've got the right profile, it should have the data here, because I've seen the data before. But what I might just need to check, yeah, there's the data there. I just check that I'm not lying about the organic traffic, because I wouldn't want to accuse Sue of having no organic traffic if I've just been on the wrong profile. And this is one of the reasons why I always star my the actual one that I want to look at, because when you've got loads, you can easily get the wrong one. So I definitely recommend that you star it to make sure you get it. So the fact that that was a mistake on my part is quite useful, because it shows you what I've done wrong, really. Okay, so let's go down here. Again, there's no goals in this particular profile, but what I can see is the clicks and the sessions. So what I'm going to show you, I'm going to just focus on the last month so we can have more relevant data. I think most of this happened in the last month. And I'll go back one more month. And what I'm going to show you is clicks versus sessions. Now, remember with Google, you pay for the clicks. You don't pay for when they come over to the site, and you don't pay for an ad to be seen. And let's see if we can understand what's happened. I do know the reason for this, because I've actually done a bit of research to try and find out. So what we can see is here we had 196 sessions, but we only had 660 clicks. Sorry, the other way around. We had 1,900 clicks, but we only had 600 sessions. So what that means is we're paying for clicks, but they're not coming across to the website. So there's a couple of things that could be causing that. So first of all, I'm going to go and see if I've got any that have got no sessions at all, because that might be something a bit strange. So let me have a look. I've got 14, so let me have a look. So and what I see is that there are some here where I've got ADHD, CA, and Satori comms, where I've actually got lots and lots of clicks, lots of money being spent, but no sessions. Now, this is because the way that the account has been set up is basically wrong. What's happened is that in the Google Ads account, there's multiple websites where this traffic is being sent. So this is all going to the Satori site, but this is going to a completely different site. Now, in analytics, we are able to link more than one website together. So what that means is that, or one Google Ads account. So we're seeing the clicks in here, but we're not seeing the sessions. So fundamentally, what's happened is you should have had a Google Ads account for each website, a Google Analytics account for each website, and then you wouldn't have seen this traffic in there, because those clicks would have gone to this particular website. Okay, now we can see that if we add a secondary dimension of URL, What that will allow me to do is, some of them are not set, but all of those ones that are going somewhere else, they are going, so they're going to a different site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an advanced filter so that the URL, which is that one there, has to contain the Tory, and then that, if I spell it right, and then that will get rid of the ones that I'm not interested in. So that shows you how to use the advanced filters. Okay, now that will get rid of some of the problem, but not all of it. So what we need to do is we need to understand why we're getting big differences, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in order of clicks, and then I'm going to try and understand why I've got a gap. So this is the biggest one, 6277118. That one is pretty big as well. That one is awful, and that one is okay, because actually you've got decent number of sessions compared with clicks. That one's okay, and that one's not so good either. And the upsetting thing about this is that a lot of this money was sent on these ones where actually they didn't even go to the website. So we need to look at the type of campaign and understand what's going on. And immediately I can see that the ones that have spent all the money are the Gmail campaigns, where they've clicked on the ad within Gmail, but they've not then clicked through to the website. So so this is a bit like a display ad. You're paying for the clicks of that display ad, or a YouTube ad where you see a video views. That's probably a better comparison. But actually, they're not ever getting to the site. So if you look at the number of people that actually got to the site, it was from the immune system campaign, and it was the meditation for health sites. Now, what that means is that these are the ones that we really should be looking at. So I'm going to have a look at these, and I think I'll make my life a little bit easier, and I'll just see if I can just look at keywords. And this time I'm going to look at the keywords, and what I'm going to, and you can see that I've got 504 sessions because these are the text campaigns. And then what I'll do is our secondary dimension of the campaign name, so that I know which campaign I'm looking at. And what you'll notice with these ones is where you've got a click, you've got a similar number of sessions. So these actually are the ones that were driving the majority of the sessions over to the website. And these are actually pretty good key phrases. I haven't got a problem with those key phrases. They look pretty good. But what we need to see then is what happened next. So the first thing is you had really, really high bounce rates. So we need to understand why these people arrived on your site and moved away again. And so what I'm going to do, because I've already investigated this, I'm going to go and have a look at location. Because what we often find is if you only offer yoga, even if it's online yoga, people will tend to go, oh, you're a plumber, you're an accountant, they'll tend to go to people they know locally. So what I want to do is I want to understand where this traffic is coming from a perspective of whether it was basically nearby. Because, okay, yoga nearby, that actually was okay. But some of these are really, really high bounce rate. So I've got two things I can do. I can either go into the audience and look at location, or I can look at location here. I'm going to go into look into audience location because I want to show you that because we've not looked at it yet. We can come back to this in a second. So if I summarize, what this means is that what Sue was doing was she was spending a huge amount of money on campaigns that didn't actually drive traffic to her site. Whereas actually what she wanted to do was have more relevant traffic. So she was choosing the wrong type of campaign type. Now, interestingly, she did get a booking from the Gmail because she's told me that. But what we really wanted to know is, of these key phrases, how many of those actually converted? But I am concerned about the bounce rate because typically for consumer sites, we'd expect a much, much lower bounce rate than this. And also this user sessions was pretty low as well. So let's go and have a look at the geo, and let's go and have a look at the locations. And let's see where all our traffic is coming from, and see if, as I've already done a bit of investigation, I've sort of understood that this is the case. So if I look at United Kingdom, I see that about half of the traffic is coming from United Kingdom, but you've got a lot of traffic from overseas. So as we know that most of this is coming from paid, we must be paying for that traffic. So if I do a secondary dimension of campaign, sorry, I'll do channel again, default channel. What I'll see is that majority of this, we've also got a load of display campaigns as well. Now, display is another example where you'll get a lot of clicks, but you won't get as you'll get a lot of sessions, but you can see the bounce rate, and they don't tend to convert. So again, quite a lot of wastage on that as well. In this particular case, they're really good for making remarketing audiences, and for some types of campaigns, they do work really well. But I had a look at those and they weren't working so well. So if we look at the paid search and the display, what you can see is a lot of that is in traffic from India. So actually, we're not really getting, we're spending a lot of money on traffic that isn't even from the UK. So if you actually look at the stuff that, if you look at the UK, so if we do country is United Kingdom. Sorry. You can see that a huge amount of users were from the paid, and that was about, let me see, that was as a percentage half. So what that meant was first of all, she was paying for a lot of display, which doesn't usually get lots of converts, and the paid search that actually was from search was only 400 or 300 sessions. So from all that money that she spent, she actually only got 400 useful clicks. And of those useful clicks, we would have only expected maybe 4 people to have actually converted, picked up the phone, or did a conversion. So that really meant that a lot of the ad spend was wasted. So I'm going to flick back over to the main site and see what the conversation's happening. So, and then I will share my screen, see if there's any more questions. So obviously we've got to the end of the session today. So if anybody's got any more questions about what we were looking at with Sue, please ask a question now. But the real crux of this is that when you set up an analytics account, it's absolutely essential that you're measuring the outcome of goals and conversions so that you actually can see what's working or not. Also, don't be fooled by Google trying to sell you display and Gmail, etc., etc. If you've only got a small amount of budget, it's much better that you focus it on the UK and you actually focus it on search ads, and preferably stuff that's nearby you, because that is going to get you the best return for your money. And then what you need to do is you then need to see what happens when they arrive on the site. You know, if you've got such high bounce rate, is that a speed issue? Is that something to do with the way the site's laid out? Let's have a look at the user journey, and is it easy to purchase from that site? Okay, now, unfortunately, I've got some bad news for you guys. This is going to be the last webinar before Christmas, until the new year. So I'd like to thank everybody for all the for coming along week after week since April. I think we've done something like 40 webinars in the, with all the other stuff that we've done since April. So I'd like to thank you all very much for your continued patronage. I'd just like to send over a few offers. I'm just going to get rid of this call. As somebody's just called me again. So first of all, I just want to remind you about the conference. So we will have a full program of webinars starting again in January. And then what I think we'll be doing is we'll be alternating between an introduction one and an advanced one. So that will make the workload spread a little bit more evenly. And then what we'll do is we'll also alternate the subject. But please come along. It's on the 16th of February. You can either donate to charity. We've got 2 streams in Lister Digital Live. We're going to have Anicca doing all the introduction sessions. So if you're a beginner or you know somebody that needs to learn some new stuff, and then we've got all my technical colleagues, and I think Chris is doing an advanced one as well, from a whole load of great suppliers. They're going to be doing the advanced stream. And we got people like Frederick Valise, who comes from Google originally, Jono from Yoast, Frederica from SEM Russia. We got some great speakers for you. So hopefully you'll find that really useful. Also, if you want to do some homework over the Christmas period, then, and you haven't already signed up for the Academy, please go and have a look at the Academy. If you click on the button, you can sign up for the Academy. We will be running the 12-day DMI CIM course. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. That's going to be starting in February. We will continue to offer a discount on anybody that signs up, because we realise everybody's still struggling. But if you are interested in getting a qualification, the course is just finishing in the next few weeks. Please sign up for that. And then finally, just as a sort of us asking something back from you guys, if any of you would like to give us a review, thank you, and thank you so much for all your sort of attendance. It's been really great working with you. I'm hoping that we won't go down into lockdown again after Christmas. But if any of you would give us a review, we really appreciate it, because it does help us when we're trying to get new clients. And if any of you know anybody that needs some help, we're obviously still hoping to grow. And otherwise, I'd like to thank you so much, and we'll see you in 2021. Thanks very much, guys.